Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing. I'm on my own today. Antoinette's away, so I will be your host. So we're going to talk about intuition today, and this is a massive subject, and one that honestly, if you asked me a few years ago whether I was qualified to speak on, I'd go no. I mean, I know that I have intuition, and I know that I've had intuitive nudges, and I know that I've had hunches and I've acted on them, and that those things had consequences, and sometimes they turned out one way and sometimes they turned out another. But quite frankly, I would definitely not qualify myself as being somebody who knows much about intuition. Fortunately, I've learned a whole lot more about it in the last couple of years. And one of the things that I've learned is that it has a kind of mystique to it that sort of implies that it's not for everyone. So I want to just start off the bat by saying it's for everyone. And if I can do it and access it, I promise you, so can you. So what is intuition? Well, I looked it up before I started this, and the dictionary definition is intuition is the ability to understand or know something without the need for conscious reasoning, or simply put, without the need to think about it. So intuition is something that is not associated with thought. It's not associated with your thoughts and your feelings. And this is why it can actually be such a mysterious kind of thing. And it's not something that we're actually taught to do. And it can seem as if it's difficult to access. So I want you to know that I used to think that intuition was only for the chosen few. I sort of imagined that you needed to be a very powerful healer, or you needed to be a psychic, or you definitely needed to be a mystic, or you needed to have a special relationship maybe with the divine, and like a prophet, right? And those were the chosen few who really had intuition that they could hear, listen to, and act upon. What I discovered is that that's not true. I sort of had an idea that your intuition was like, like a stage light coming on, boom, or like a burning bush moment. And of course, I didn't have those. So I just assumed that I'm not an intuitive person. I'm a thinking, logicking, reasoning kind of person. So here's the thing. We are all intuitive beings. It's just that intuition is not encouraged. And we have never, I believe, certainly I was never taught that you can access your intuition in a very sort of logical, practical kind of structure. You can use a structure that gives you a framework that allows you to access your intuition. So when I discovered the structure, I was like, oh, thank goodness. That was a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, okay, it's a structure. It's a structure that I don't know how to do that well, but the more I practice it, the better I'm going to get at it. And the better I get at it, the more likely I am to be able to connect to my intuition and access my intuition in a way that isn't sort of hit and miss and random. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about today. So I want to talk about how it works, how we can all access it. And I'm going to give you a couple of hacks, and I think I might tell you a story or two. And hopefully it's going to, at the end, give you a knowing that you can access your intuition, and also why this is so important and why it's so vital for healing. So before we start, I just want to clarify how the streams of consciousness work within us. And I have spoken about this in earlier podcast episodes, and this is going to be really quick, right? So basically, we have three streams of consciousness. We have our conscious mind. That's that part of you that's listening to this, the rational thinking mind. We have the unconscious, which is the one that we can't actually access easily unless we make an effort, because it's the part that we're not aware of, but it's sort of running the show. And then we have something called our superconscious. So you can think of it as your superconscious mind, your higher mind, or your spirit. So your conscious and your unconscious are part of your ego. They're part of the humanness that you have, that they're part of the filter or the map of reality that you've created to allow yourself to navigate your way through the world. And that part of your reality, your conscious and your unconscious, not your unconscious so much, your conscious communicates to you through your thoughts and your feelings. And your thoughts and your feelings are always based on impressions that you've received from your past. So what ends up happening is when we're young, we have things that happen to us, we have unresolved traumas, we have survival mechanisms and coping strategies, and we have a view of the world, what I believe about myself, what I believe about others, and what I believe about the world. And this can be slightly different in different circumstances, but that's our map of reality. And whenever any information comes in through our senses, we run that by past our map of reality. And our map of reality acts as a filter. So, for example, think of it like colored sunglasses. I might have pink sunglasses. You may have blue glass in your sunglass lenses. Someone else may have yellow glass in their sunglass lenses. Someone else may have red glass in their sunglass lenses. And we're all seeing the same thing, except we're seeing it in slightly different hues, all right? And so our view of reality is going to be different from our neighbor's view of reality. So our thoughts and feelings are always based on the information being run through our filter. So it's only ever based on the past. It's only ever based on what you've experienced in the past and what you believe to be true and possible. And your conscious mind communicates to you through your thoughts and your feelings. So that's not your intuition, okay? And that map of reality is designed so that you can stay safe and survive. And so its core foundation is fear-based. It's like, well, if we don't actually stick to the map and we don't stick to the rules as we know them, then we're going to die. So the underlying sort of substrate of your conscious and your unconscious mind is your fear. The fear of being annihilated, the fear of needing to survive, the fear of being rejected in some way or another. Now, the superconscious, or you can think of this as your spirit if you choose, or your higher mind, that can only be accessed through your intuition. And not your intuition, I apologize. It can be accessed through your imagination, and it communicates to you via your intuition. Now, this is the part of you that is your spirit longing to express itself in the world. This is the part of you that is limitless. This is the part of you that continues to exist when your physical body dies, right? This is the part of you that's all-knowing. And it communicates to you directly via your intuition. So you can see why intuition is really important, right? And the foundation of the superconscious is joy and creation and love. And not love in the sort of romantic sense, but like, what would I love? And because your superconscious is connected to that limitless part of you, there are no limitations. So there's no fear and there's none of those constraints. And so when we connect to our superconscious or our spirit, when we connect to what is it that we would love to express and create in this world, no matter what, that's when we can access our intuition. The problem is that by default, our focus is on staying alive. Because when in our formative years, when we were helpless and hopeless, not helpless, we were helpless and relatively powerless as tiny little beings, we needed others to look after us. And so that part by default is where we put all our focus. And in fact, that's how we get parented. So it's all good and well for your 2-year-old to talk about the fairies in the garden and the imaginary friends and all the rest. But, by the time they get to like 5 or 6 or 7 or however old it is, we basically train that out of children. And our schooling system focuses on our thinking and our logic and our rational brains. And people who function well in that area, they're the ones who are validated within that system, not the whole education system, but the bulk of it, right? The sort of mainstream one. And so that's the part that is validated. And science has become our new religion. And, science is all about it's rationality. It's what can you prove and what can you see and what do you know is out there, and what do you have tangible proof of. And so this faculty of our imagination and our intuition, again, it seems to only be to be restricted to true creatives. So those are the ones that I left out in the beginning. I used to think people who were like arty, creatives, they could potentially tap into the intuition because that's how they created. So the truth is we all have these 3 streams of consciousness. We all can connect it to our limitless spirit, our superconscious or our higher mind, whatever you want to call it. And we can connect to what we love because we all have a heart, and we all have a heart that's longing to express itself in this world. And when we do that, we are capable of accessing our intuition. So let me tell you my story. So I've always prided myself on being rational and logical. However, I've always had a strong pull towards the mystical and the esoteric. And this might be because my mother was really that way inclined. And I was the youngest of three children. So I spent a lot of time with my mother when my siblings were already, doing things like teenagers do. They didn't want to be at home, but I was at home. And I spent a lot of time with my mother, and I was fascinated by some of the stuff that my mother shared with me. And I've told you this before. When I was 3 years old, I had seizures, a seizure disorder. Nobody could find out what it was. They couldn't diagnose it. My mother took me to a homeopath, and it was cured. And that was the beginning of my sort of foray into complementary or alternative medicine. So my mother always had a sort of a bent towards this. And even though I was really interested in the mystical, and I studied various forms of energy healing once I qualified as a homeopath. So I studied as a homeopath, and at the same time, I did an acupuncture qualification, and I used those modalities in my practice. And then I did energy medicine because one of my limiting beliefs is, that I'm not good enough. And the more I know, the more likely I am to be able to help people. And so I studied energy medicine, and I did Reiki, and I did energy healing. And even though it was sort of fast, I just couldn't trust it. I couldn't trust that I was actually doing the healing. Okay. And then I discovered Jinshin Jitsu, which was also an energy healing technique, but it was sort of very logical and structured in that there were sort of safety energy locks in the body, like acupuncture, very, very similar, points meaning something associated with energy areas. There was like a logic and a structure to it. And I was like, okay, I can get behind this more. And I also I also explored a whole lot of different spiritual traditions and, mystical traditions. And I was fascinated by that. But again, I thought that this was limited. As much as I was fascinated by it and I learned about it and I wanted to know about it, I sort of felt like I couldn't access that, because I was just too grounded and too earthed and too logical. And in actual fact, for many years, I prided myself on not being a weird complementary medicine practitioner, like being logical and to the point and straightforward and not hoo-hoo. And as a consequence of that, I thought that I couldn't access my intuition. So I've been very fortunate in that a lot of times I have taken a road in my life that has been the right road for me. And I know now that that was my intuition, but I had no way of knowing it at the time. So one of my biggest stresses was when I finished school, I did very well at school because, not good enough always is a high achiever. And I had a lot of options. I could have gone to med school. I actually decided to go to law, to be a lawyer. And then there was an opportunity to go and study chiropractic. And I had been going to a chiropractor for many years. And it was like a lastminute.com thing. And then they invited me for an interview. And I remember sitting in my mom's kitchen crying and saying to her, what am I going to do? I'm at the law. I'm in at the law faculty. I'm going to study law. It took me so long to make this decision. And now there's this opportunity to do chiropractic, which I sort of always really wanted to do because I was really interested in the health sciences, but the complementary ones. And then I said to her, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go to the interview. And if they accept me, I'm going to take it as a sign. Now, was that my intuition? Well, I have to tell you in hindsight, yes, I think it was, because I went for the interview. They asked me to wait outside. And within 5 minutes, they said, well done. Congratulations, you've been accepted into the program. I went to study chiropractic, and about halfway through my second year, because the two programs ran together, homeopathy and chiropractic, because the first 2 years were just medical sciences. And halfway through second year, I realized I don't really want to be a chiropractor. I don't want to deal with like sports injuries and those kind of things. I saw it as being limited for me. It's not limited. I know that now, but at the time, and actually I would much rather be a homeopath. And so I made a decision and I changed my study course to being homeopathy. And quite frankly, I didn't look back after that. Best choice I could have made. So I didn't think that I didn't have intuition. I just didn't think that I could access it. Anyway, fast forward many years and many modalities later and lots of mind work and some of the mystical stuff and some of the energetic stuff, but still, always the energetic stuff, always kept it there. That sort of kept that part a little bit under wraps, okay? And then I'd met a beautiful woman when I was studying with Dr. John DeMartini. Her name was Renette Hinsberg-Nell, a bit older than me, became a sort of a mentor of mine. And a couple of years ago, I started doing coaching with her. And during the coaching, she took me through a process that helped me access my intuition. And she put me on to reading a few books. One of them was called The Path of Least Resistance by Robert Fritz, which is an excellent book on how we create. all right? How creatives create and how we can all tap into that so that we can create what we love. And then that led me into the work of William Whitecloud, which is really the stuff that she was doing. And so I read The Magician's Way, and he had a couple of other books, and then I did a program with him. And I realized, holy moly, there's a structure that you can apply that can help you access your intuition. Now, does it mean that you get an answer for everything you ever want? No, it doesn't mean that. But does it mean that you have a place that you can start with, you can reliably connect to what is true for you? Yes. If you use the structure, will you 100% get the right answer? I don't know. And I'd have to say sometimes maybe it isn't your intuition, but the more you practice it, the louder the voice of your intuition becomes. So what I learned from Renette was that in order to hear this inner voice, this voice of my inner wisdom, my intuition, the voice literally of my spirit, I needed to align myself with what was true from the point of view of my spirit. I had to align myself with this more imaginative, intuitive, intangible kind of aspect of myself, right? I had to get out of my thoughts and feelings. Remember that definition. It's the ability to understand and know something without needing to think about it. I needed to learn how to transcend my thoughts and feelings in order to be able to connect to my intuition. And so how do I connect to my spirit? Well, by connecting with what is true. What is true for me? What would I love? What would I really love in this world? What lights me up? What like brings out the best of me, right? When I connect to what that is, does it make me feel inspired? Or, does it make me feel as if I've got a sense of achievement? Does it make me feel confident? That's my ego. Or does it make me feel fulfilled, inspired, truly grateful, enthusiastic? Does it make me feel as if my heart is opened with love? That, for me, that's how I know that I'm connecting to my spirit. So the structure, I'm going to give you the structure. This is the structure. And I've spoken about this before in terms of how do we create, right? So I'm just going to reiterate. Imagine you've got a 12-volt battery. That's like a car battery, right? There are 3 cells that are 2 volts each, negative. And there are 3 cells that are 2 volts each, positive. And there's a positive terminal and a negative terminal on your battery. Now, if you want your car to run, you need to connect both terminals. If one of those terminals are not connected, the car cannot run. You have to connect them both in order for the car to run. And it's the same with creation. If we want to create, we have to connect both the negative positive terminal and the positive terminal. Now, please, this is not the good terminal and the bad terminal. So think of a battery. It's neutral. It's just a way of distinguishing equal and opposite kind of charge, okay? So the structure to connect to your intuition is, firstly, connect to the negative pole of the battery, which is the truth of your thoughts and feelings. If you are denying your thoughts and feelings because your thoughts and feelings might seem a bit negative to you, and you think that you need to be positive all the time, and we have spoken about that, then you are not actually connecting to the truth of your reality. So whenever I want to connect to my intuition, the first thing I do is I ask myself, what am I thinking and feeling about this? What are my fears? What are my assumptions? What are the stories that I'm telling myself about why I can't have this or why this is a terrible idea? How does this make me feel? And what does it make me want to do? Or what do I do when I feel this way? That's even better. Like, what have I done in the past when I felt this way? I'm like, okay, so this is my current reality, negative terminal of the battery. The positive terminal of the battery is, now I want to connect to my spirit. Now, the easiest way to do that is to literally just ask yourself, what would I love? Now, if when you say what you would love, you come up with the opposite of what you've got, that's not your spirit. That's your ego saying, my life would be actually great if I just had the opposite. So just think about this. Imagine you are upset because your partner or your spouse you feel they're not listening to you, or they're not respecting you, for example. And so you write down your current reality. Can't believe that he or she is doing this again. Oh my God, I can't believe we're here again. How many times do I have to say this? Blah, 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 blah. If this doesn't get sorted out, this relationship's going to end. All of that, right? How does this make me feel? It makes me feel frustrated and scared. What does it make me want to do? It makes me want to confront and speak about it and unpack it and like go over and over and over. And actually, it makes me want to change the other person. So now you connect to what you'd love. What would you love? And what comes up for you is, I want the other person to change. That's not what you'd love. When you truly connect to what you'd love, you come up with things like, what qualities would you love in a relationship? If you imagined your ideal relationship, what would that look like? What would it feel like? What would you be doing? What would you love? And that's connecting the positive terminal. Now, it's sometimes quite hard to do that because there's so much resistance from your thoughts and your feelings and your past experiences that connecting to the truth of your spirit actually also takes quite a bit of practice. It's not undoable. Anyone can do it. It just takes practice. So many people, when you ask them, what do you love? They'll say, I don't know. Very often, it's not that we don't know. It's that we're so programmed into thinking that we can't get it, or we're so scared that if we admit that that's what we'd love, that we're going to push it further away from ourselves. Or the gap between where we are and what we'd love is so big that we can't cope with that the discomfort of, oh, but I don't have what I love. And what if I never get with what I love? That we think we don't know. So there are ways of doing this also. There are ways of exercising this muscle to help you connect to your spirit. And an easy way to do it is to just close your eyes, connect to your body, and then just imagine that there is a beautiful golden ball of light about 20 centimeters above your head, and imagine that that's your spirit. And then just set an intention to connect your awareness with that ball of light. And as you connect it, imagine you connect it to your spirit. Now, you might say, well, what is that supposed to look and feel like? Well, I don't know. It's different for everyone. Once you connect to that, this is your intention and imagination. Imagine that ball rising and your consciousness and your awareness rising with it until you feel expanded and open and free. And now you're not thinking about what an ass your partner is. And in that space, ask yourself, what would I love? Because whatever comes to you then is more likely to be truly coming from your heart than coming from your mind. So once you've aligned with what you love, then you can ask yourself, what's true for me to do next? And whatever you get, I take that as being my intuition. Now, sometimes I just want you to know you're going to get nothing. And you'll be like, this doesn't work for me. I'm not getting my intuition. Well, very often the reason why you don't get it is A, because first of all, you think there needs to be an answer. And B, there's an answer that you want. And if the answer is not the answer that you want or a way that you think it needs to look and feel, then you're going to go, this didn't work. Right? So this was the same for me when I started. I was like, oh, how do I know this is my intuition? Oh, this is the other thing. So you can do this. You can connect to what you'd love, and you can get it. You can get like, your next intuitive step is to make this call to someone or to have this conversation with someone. And the minute you like come back to earth, your mind goes, that's so stupid. That's never going to work. Why do you need to do that? That's not okay. So just know that when you connect to your intuition and you get something from your intuition, your ego, your conscious mind, the minute you come out of that, the minute you get it, is going to tell you why that was stupid and didn't work. So I have that too, still. But what I learned was I committed to whatever I got, I was going to action, even if it was uncomfortable. And here's another thing. Your intuition, your spirit is not going to tell you everything you want. It's not going to tell you everything you want to know. It's not going to tell you to take the same action you've always taken, because the same action you've always taken is going to get you what you've always gotten. So sometimes what comes from your intuition is not necessarily within your comfort zone. But here's the other thing. Your intuition is never going to tell you to do something that's absolutely impossible. So for me, I made this commitment. I'm going to act on whatever I get, whether I believe it or not. Because the act of acting on it tells my subconscious, this is the part of my consciousness that creates my reality, that I trust my intuition. And the more I trust my intuition, the more likely my intuition is to communicate with me. And so this is what I did. And I have to tell you, it's taken a while, but I very, very seldom don't trust what I get. And in fact, when I don't trust what I get, it's because I know I'm not truly connected to my spirit. So again, it's like going to gym. The more you go to the gym and the more you lift weights, the bigger the weights are that you are able to lift. So let's just talk about what intuition actually is. I think we've got it now, but it's it's the inner guiding voice of your spirit, the truth of who you are, and it's guiding you to the next step for you. Now, sometimes the next step is do nothing. In fact, very often I get the next step is to do nothing. And you know why? Because one of my ego strategies is to fix shit quickly so that I don't feel uncomfortable. And then my intuition says, don't do anything. Allow it to be. And you know what I've discovered? And I am going to mention here that one of my primary limiting beliefs is I need to control myself, others in the world, which actually translates into I need to fix everything and act immediately, just saying. And what I've noticed is that the less I interfere when I get that message from my intuition, the more likely the situation is to resolve itself without my input. All I have to do is be with the discomfort of not actually taking the action. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. So this is, your intuition is always going to show you the next step. The next step might be do nothing. And then when you check in again tomorrow or next week, it might be do nothing. Or it might be go to the beach. I got this one day. It was a Monday. And so my coping strategy is to do, right? To do and to be busy and to be very productive and to work very hard. And so Mondays used to be my social media planning day. So on a Monday morning, I used to plan all my social media posts and I used to create them. So I used to shoot the videos. I used to decide what the live was going to be. I used to work out the outline of the live. That was my Monday morning. It was busy. And the rest of my week's social media presence depended on what I did first thing on a Monday morning. So I started doing this work, and I always, every morning before I start work, I connect to the vision that I have from my spirit for my business, my current reality, and I find out what is true for me to do today. What's true for me to do today? So I tune in, and so now I'm hoping I'm going to get, shoot 3 reels, and I'm going to get inspired on how to do all of that. And I literally go to the beach. And I'm like, what? I come out of there, I'm like, oh, for reals, go to the beach. So for me to go to the beach, first of all, I live about 15 or 20 minutes away from the beach. So I've got to get in my car, drive to the beach. Then when I'm there, I'm not just going to be there for 5 minutes. I'm going to go for a walk. The walk is probably going to take me about, because, there's no point in walking for less than 45 minutes in my estimate. So I'm going to walk for 45 minutes to an hour. And then I'm probably going to be hot. So then I'm going to want to have a swim in the ocean, which means that by the time I get home, 2 hours will have elapsed. And then I have to shower, wash my hair, get myself looking in a way that, I want to look on my social media. And that's going to be my whole morning. So I'm sitting here in my office going, oh, no. And I reminded myself that I'd made a commitment to follow through on whatever my intuition said. So what I did was I took myself to the beach. Now, just because I decided to follow my intuition does not mean that my trip to the beach was peachy. All the way, I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Honestly, I can't believe I'm losing 2 hours. But while I was on the beach, I had an insight into a problem that I'd been wrestling with. And that insight was worth gold for me. And the truth is that when I got home, I can't remember what I did that day, but you know what? All the social media stuff got done that week. Whatever needed doing got done, despite the fact that I went to the beach for 2 to 2.5 hours. So sometimes your intuition tells you to do things that don't make any sense. Once I had a vision and you need to draw it with wax crayons. I was like, now, first of all, I can barely draw a stick man. So I was like, what? It was this image of a lighthouse and on the rocks, and it had to be like a children's drawing, like wax crayons, which of course I didn't have. So the next day, I don't live close to town. I had to go to the store to buy the wax crayons. I had to sit myself down. What a waste of time, drawing a children's picture. But you know what? Sometimes your intuition tells you to do things that don't make sense. What I've learned is I just do whatever I get. And I trust that it's going to be exactly what I need to do. And you know what? Every time a coconut, it turns out to be exactly what I needed to do. So you have to trust it and do it, because the more you do it, the more you're going to create momentum that's going to propel you in the direction of what you would love to create. So what it isn't, let's get clear on what your intuition is not, or what it's not going to do for you. It is not your get out of jail card when your life is hard that's going to suddenly make everything peachy. It is not the answer to every question that you have. No. It's also not going to give you the next 7 steps and the complete outline of how you need to do things in order to create what you love. It's only going to give you the next step. And the next step doesn't always look like a logical. It doesn't. Sometimes you get a step that's like a logical progression. This morning, I got do a newsletter to my mailing list. That was one of the things that I need to do today for my business. Now, that makes sense, right? I have a business. I want to connect to my audience. I'm trying to grow a community. Shoot this podcast was another thing. It was on my list of things to do. So that makes sense. But sometimes you get something that doesn't make any sense at all, like go to the beach. So you're not going to it's not going to give you the 6-year plan. It's also not even going to give you the 6-point plan. It's going to give you the next step. And the next step doesn't always look logical. So it's also not going to make all your problems go away. And every time you take a step that you got from your intuition, everything's not always going to work out in your favor immediately. It's not a way to bulletproof yourself against pain. It's also not a dead cert that things are going to turn out exactly the way you want them to, right? So if that's, if you're trying to access it for that kind of information, you're acting from a place of fear, and so you're not connected to your spirit. And if you're not connected to your spirit, there's very little chance that you're going to get a true reflection on what your intuition is trying to say to you. So Satguru said, we all born with different talents. I'm mangling this, right? But we're all born with different talents and abilities, but we all have the potential to blossom fully as a human being. And so I believe we're all born with different talents, and we develop all these different limiting beliefs, and we've all got different abilities, and we've all got different intellectual capabilities, but we all have a spirit. We all have a heart that is longing to express itself in the world, and we all have the ability to connect to our intuition. Now, one of the other problems with intuition is that it's not loud. One of my teachers, Dr. John DeMartini, had a quote, and he said, when the voice on the inside gets louder than the clamoring voices on the outside, then you have begun to master your life. And I take that to mean that when you can hear the quiet inner voice, and you can shut out all the outer voices, including actually the loud inner voice, which is the voice of your ego that tells you your intuition is rubbish, and it's got to be like straight, you've got to do it logically and reasonably. That's when you start mastering your life. All right. And so in order for you to hear that inner voice, you can use the structure that I was talking about, but you also need to create space for that to come through. And you need to create stillness for that to come through, or certainly in my experience. All right. So we need to make room. We need to make room for quiet reflection. We need to make room for answered prayers. We need to slow down. We need to create space. We need to create an opportunity, and we need to set an intention that this is what we're doing. And this is just as important as choosing what you're going to eat for your health, or how much you're going to exercise, or what it is that you're going to do, right? Or how you're going to get your children ready for school, all right? And so it has to become a priority, because it's not just going to happen. It's like any talent. If you want to learn how to play a musical instrument, God, if you want to learn discipline and patience, try and master a musical instrument, or at least just get proficient with it. It takes years. Now, it's not going to take you 12 years to get connected to your intuition. You can connect to your intuition today, but to trust it and to do it reliably, you have to practice, and you have to create space for it. Another way that I've found that helps you connect to your intuition is to appreciate the small moments of joy that there's to be had in life, regardless of what your circumstances are. And this can be very difficult. But you know what? The more you do that, the more you connect with the joy that's available to you, regardless of what else is going on, the more you're connecting to your spirit. The more you connect to your spirit, the more likely you are to start hearing the voice or the quiet nudge of your intuition. I mentioned this before. The next steps that your intuition delivers can sometimes not be comfortable. But here's the thing. So I was like, oh, honestly, I would just like my intuition and my spirit to be able to guarantee that it's going to work out the way I want. Okay, that's my ego. Can you hear that, right? Wanting to control things. But what if you only get the next step because you have to take the next step to become the person who's capable of taking the next step? And once you take the next step, then you become that version of you that's capable of taking the next step. So if your intuition revealed steps 1 through to 10, and you looked at step 10 and you were like, holy moly, I can't do that, you wouldn't take step 1. And so it's like a breadcrumb trail. It's like a stepping stone trail. Each stepping stone is revealed once you've stepped onto the one that's right in front of you. And when you've stepped onto the one that's right in front of you, then the next one appears. And when you step onto that one, then the next one appears, right? They don't all appear at once, because, as I said, if step 10 looks like you're going to have to plummet off a cliff, you'll be like, no, I'm not doing that. Thanks, but no thanks, intuition. So that's why I believe we only get one step at a time, so that we can, each step helps us to grow, helps us to maintain, create momentum, helps us to connect more fully with our spirit and what we love, and helps us to become the person that can take the next step and the next step and the next step. So Here's my confession and my tips from avoiding my intuition and a complete control addict. Number one, find a way to connect to your spirit, to connect to what you'd love. Even just asking yourself every day, what would I really love? What would I love? What would I love my career to look like? What would I love my love life to look like? What would I love my health to look like? What would it feel like when I got that? That is connecting to what you'd love. Recognize what's coming from your ego. What's your thoughts and feelings? If my thoughts are, I look at myself in the mirror and I go, oh, I'm so fat and ugly. I want to be thin and beautiful. Can you see that that's just the opposite of fat and ugly? Because my ego says, well, if you're feeling awful because you think you're fat and ugly, then you're going to feel amazing when you actually think you're thin and beautiful. So that's what we call a negative vision. All right. So become aware of what's going on with your ego. You need to cultivate an awareness of yourself. You need to really know yourself. Repeat often. I don't have to fix myself to create what I love. That one is a mantra of mine. I don't have to fix myself in order to create what I love. Slow down. Ugh, I have to tell myself this all the time, okay? Make space so that your intuition can come through, so that you can hear the message. And if you get an intuitive nudge, however it appears to you, sometimes I get an intuitive nudge or insight when I'm in the shower. It's not always in the structure, but the more you use the structure, the more you start developing it in other areas of your life. If you get a nudge, do it. If you are sitting on your yoga mat and you think of someone that you haven't connected with for a long time, send them a message and tell them you think about it. I often send people messages. I thought of you on my mat this morning. Thought of you when I came out of my meditation this morning. How are you? Hope you're okay. Whatever. Okay. Just do it. What's the harm? It might not look like you're doing anything, but if that's what your intuition has told you to do, then do it. Okay. So I think that's really all I have to say, right? Oh, and the last one is it doesn't have to be complicated. One of the most common strategies of our ego to railroad our ability to connect to our spirit and listen to our intuition is to make things complicated. My ego is the king of that. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can really be as simple as what I have just outlined. Now, the other thing you can, of course, do is you can get someone to help you to do this. You can get someone to help you connect to your intuition. You can get someone to help you connect to your spirit. You can get someone to teach you the structure. And of course, I would love to be that person. So I am going to tell you that I have a 4-week one-to-one. It's a one-to-one program. So you have 4 sessions with me where I will teach you the basic structure of creating and connecting to your intuition. We will uncover your limiting beliefs. I'll show you a technique on how it is that you get a handle on those thoughts and feelings and you know what's coming from your ego so that you've identified that reality. And I will teach you a really easy process as I outlined here, but I'll take you through it and help you practice it to connect to your spirit so that you can start making spirit-filled choices for yourself. And once we become proficient at that, I'm going to teach you the simple structure on how it is that you can learn to connect to your intuition. So if that is something that you would love, if you would love this structure, if you would like to use the tools and techniques that I used to help me connect to my intuition to create the life that I would love, then I would love to help you with that. My email address is in the show notes. You can email me directly. My WhatsApp number will also be in the show notes. You can send me a WhatsApp. And I can then send you all the details if you want to know more. Meanwhile, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing. We really do appreciate you being here with us. Today it's just me, but usually it's Antoinette and I. And if you found this episode useful, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and family and make them part of The Missing Link in Your Healing community. I will speak to you again on the next episode.